Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at Spunky Old Broad 1 or reach out to me on our website at spunkyoldbroad.com. And now, back to the show. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Gail, SOB, Spunky Old Broad, and I'm so delighted to bring my guest to you today. Her name is Sheree Clark, and she's a midlife courage coach. Can you imagine that courage in your midlife? She's a TV show host, she's an inspiring speaker, and an accomplished author. She's written and presented on topics ranging from finding your passion to overcoming career burnout. Her Fork in the Road coaching practice keeps her busy working with clients one-on-one and in groups on creating an authentically fulfilling life. In her personal time, she shares with her cat Lotus and works on their yoga poses together. And Sheree, I have to tell you, I'm a cat person too. Usually my cat is on my lap while I'm doing these shows. But I have to tell you, your thing about yoga, I was watching a video that was sent to me the other day of a huge Doberman who was watching TV and followed all the poses that the person was doing on TV. It was the most amazing thing I have ever seen. And so I welcome, if you ever have any videos of your cat doing yoga, please send them to me. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm afraid, Gail, that Lotus is more prone to corpse pose, though, which is the one where you rest at the end than any of the others. But I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's amazing what animals will do. Now, you call yourself a midlife courage coach, and I'm very interested, as you know, in women 50 plus, and that's what this broadcast is all about. How did you come up with the title of midlife courage coach?
Well, I wanted to be descriptive, and knowing that my audience is actually me, I'm midway through my sixth decade, and I also am a believer that midlife doesn't end. It starts in our 40s and then it ends when we do. But at any rate, so I wanted to do something that was descriptive. So midlife is a kind of a no-brainer, and courage is really the thing that I think is that we feel as though we need when we're older. And there's certain things in life that happen when we're younger that are just expected of us. And they're hard things. Graduating from high school, picking a college to go to, getting married, having children. Those are hard things, and they take courage. But we've got support along the way. And when we're midlife, there's this assumption that we've got it figured out. We're done. We've got our poop in a group, so to speak, and that it's all, we're good to go. We can do whatever we want. And the reality is that it takes guts to live the second half of your life for yourself when you've lived the first half for everybody else.
Well, that is true, because I know in my Facebook group, I have an SOB virtual Facebook group, and in my group, to join, I asked them what's the biggest joy in their life and what's the biggest pain. And the biggest joy, well, not for everyone, but the majority, is the freedom they feel and the feeling of not having to answer to anybody and do what they want and not be judged. And I think that's really important. But you also say that it takes guts and courage to be the best version of yourself. And I would think with everything that everybody's gone through by the time they hit 50, that would be easy. But some people carry a lot of baggage with them. So how do you address that?
Well, you really kind of hit the nail on the head there, as I'm not surprised you would. What I think what happens, at least in my observation with the women that I work with, is that although yes, we're free we can do what we want in theory, there's still expectations. And as an example, one of my friends is a grandmother, and her daughter is constantly calling upon her to babysit. Now, it doesn't mean that grandma doesn't love the grandbaby, but grandma is like, I already raised one kid. Why is everybody assuming that I'm just going to drop everything? I've got things that I want to do too, and I don't want to do that every single Wednesday when I could be doing the things that are important to me. And so I think it comes from that sort of thing, that the expectations that others have, and then we're programmed as women. We've been basically indoctrinated, especially those of us. I was born in 1956, so a baby boomer, right smack in the middle of the baby boom. And the expectation is that we will do certain things, that we'll fulfill certain roles, and that we will give up, and we'll serve ourselves last, and we'll make sure that everybody else is taken care of, and we'll get her done. And I
Well,
think,
it's funny that you picked that particular example because in my book, How to Be an SOB, a spunky old broad who kicks butt, I talk about the fact that, you as a person over 50 do not have to be at the beck and call of your kids. Yeah, you love your grandkids and yeah, you want to babysit every now and then, but they shouldn't depend on you to do it unless you personally have agreed, yeah, that I'd like every Tuesday to be my time with my grandchild. And the interesting thing is, it's funny because my kids never asked me to do that because they knew I wouldn't do it, number one. And number two, it's just that I was not that kid friendly. Now, my daughter is just the opposite. With her grandchildren, she's there every day because her daughter works. My granddaughter works. She teaches school and she works with special needs kids. So they are obligated to be at school every day, no virtual learning. And so my daughter move to where my granddaughter is and is with the kids every day to monitor their schooling and to make sure they're okay. Now, one of them is 5 and one of them is 12. So the 12-year-old is functioning fine on his own, but still she loves doing it. So it shows you the different personalities. And the point is, and I think what you're driving at, Sheree, is that if you want to do it and it's your choice to do it, you should do it. But if it's not something you want to do, then you've got to get the courage and, as you say, the guts to say no. So what are some of the common things that you deal with in your practice? And then why does someone choose to come to you?
I would say when we talk about common things, they oftentimes end up being relationships. And when we're younger, you think relationships is your primary romantic relationship, your intimate partner or whatever. But we all have relationships not only with the people in our circle, certainly our families, and that's a myriad of things. And remember, I'm talking family of your family of origin, your parents, if they're still living, or aunts, uncles, the extended family, and then your children. But the relationships that we have with our friends, employers, former employers, neighbors, all of those things. And they become, again, part and parcel of the examination process. So that's a big one. The other major one is career focused for those who are still wanting, able, maybe needing to work, where they have taken, early on. I know when I went to college, I was young, because of where I was born during the year. And when I made the decision where I was going to go to school, I didn't have a lot of guidance. I was first generation college. And so I studied something that I ended up ultimately not using or doing anything with because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Well, there are many of us who have figured, hey, I spent the money on that degree. I got all the training. I did the certifications. And now, either because I've done all that or because the expectation is that I will carry on the family business, or my father was a doctor, so I'll be a doctor. And we're realizing when we get to a certain point in our lives, that doesn't fill up the cup anymore. So those are probably the two main things. And obviously that there are sub things. Sometimes it's health, and recognizing that maybe someone's gotten a diagnosis and their time on the planet is limited, and thinking to themselves, if I'm going to do anything, I got to get it done now. So those are the sorts of things that I see most often.
So when people come to you, though, Sheree, how do you deal with the I'm going to use that word again, the baggage that they come to you with. For example, I did a program for a doctor. He did a customer appreciation day, and I was their speaker. And we talked about a lot of things. And it was interesting because my sister came with me, and my sister's a psychotherapist, and she always says, if you're anywhere within 2 to 3 hours, I'll drive with you. So I went first to her home. We drove together to the engagement and so forth. And of course, this woman was talking about, her mom and her thoughts and, her direction and so forth. And I finally said to her, I said, is your mom still living? And, that's a question to ask somebody. And she said, no. And I said, well, how long ago did she pass away? And it was something like 30 years. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, well, here you have someone who's been gone 30 years, who's still controlling your life that you don't want. And it was interesting because my sister said she almost jumped up and she was going to give a clinical definition. And she said, you did it in a very, down to earth kind of way. But how do you deal with people who are going through things and the people who are controlling them may not even be here anymore? I mean, that's a difficult thing.
If you're sensing some tentativeness in my voice, Gail, here's the thing that you never could have known when we started this interview today. My mother passed away 3 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I tell you that for this reason. My mother and I hadn't spoken or seen one another in over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So what you just described is almost like the bookend to my situation. And as I said, I know that there's no way you could have known this. And please don't feel awkward about it because I don't. And it helps underscore the point that the work gets done in different ways. Clearly, the fact that I hadn't spoken to my mother, it was closer to 40 years, but we'll say 30 for the sake of argument. Clearly there was a rift, there was an issue, there was more than one issue, and there were a variety of things. And I was in my 20s when this occurred, and it actually was right after my father died. I had a choice at that point in time about what I could and would do moving forward. And my choice changed over the years with my own maturity, with my own experiences, with my own aging process. And in my 20s, I was guilt-ridden, and it was not fun, and it was horrible, and it was embarrassing, and I never told anybody. And the main reason, Gail, I didn't tell anybody was because, and I made up things. I moved out to Iowa. My family was still living on the East Coast, and I pretended I was going home at Christmas time. I'd make up stories about things that weren't true because I wanted to invent this idyllic family when people asked. And it had to do with shame. I felt like I was broken, that I couldn't fix my family situation and the dynamics. And then as I got older and began to, quote, air quotes here, do the work, went to therapy, did counseling myself. I have a master's degree in counseling myself. I did the hard work, and I came to the realization that it takes two to make a relationship. And at the end of the day, the other relationship in the room was mine with myself. And if I walked around feeling guilt and shame over a relationship that I was unable to repair and shouldn't have been expected to, I was the child. Then I said, okay, you know what? I guess I'm here to learn a lesson through this. And so to your actual question, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't sidetrack us too terribly there, but to the point, the work that I do to help people in that situation to unpack their baggage, as you said, usually has to do with some exercises, some sort of and I have a lot of them, some way of unpacking that baggage and confronting it. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. But here's the thing. When my mother was released from this earth just a few days ago, I didn't have the horrific feeling of guilt and why didn't I try harder and oh my gosh, it's too late now. I blessed her and let her go. And
yeah.
there you have it.
Well, it is interesting. I always say I'm so fortunate because I was raised in a very loving family. My mom was strict, but she let me get away with a lot of things too. My sister was perfect. My sister was 5 years older than I, and she did everything right, and she was very bright. And I came along, and I was like a rebel. And but my mother coped with all of that, and so I've just never had a lot of hangups because I just wasn't raised like that. But I can see where when a woman gets to midlife, she wants to make a greater impact. And so, how does someone know when they're not living up to their own potential or their purpose? I mean, one of the things that I'm working on now, and I'm deciding, do I really want to do a book about it, or just do I want to write little articles about it, is leaving a life of legacy. And so, and yet I've talked to women in their 40s and they're already talking about legacy. So, how does someone know when they aren't living up to where they could or should be?
I think the best barometer for me, I can do the check in on a pretty much a daily basis, is how I feel when I get up. What is my attitude about the day? Today I had oh cool, I get to talk to Gail, and this is going to be fun, and I wonder what she's going to ask me. So I had that kind of anticipation and joy and energy. And then the second is related to the first. So how do you feel when you get up? And the second is when I look at my schedule and I see what my obligations, commitments, responsibilities, what tasks, what chores, what things do I have to do, I look at the day and I check in with myself physically as I look at each one. Now, obviously, I don't get excited when I got to go to the dentist or when I'm taking my car in to get the tires rotated. I might not feel passion and joy. But if for the most part, the things in my day are things that bring me excitement, I'm on the right path. And I have been off the right path before. And I can tell you, you know it. You know it in your gut because we are intuitive creatures, and we can snow ourselves for a certain amount of time. But at the end, you can't unknow what you know.
Well, it's funny that you talk about, how your day goes because my thing is I go to bed with a smile and I get up with a smile and then I do the work that I do all day. But to me, it isn't work, it's play because I love what I do. So I think this has a great impact, and I'm a very positive person in terms of mindset. So that's the thing that really keeps me going through thick and thin, is mindset and how you approach things and what you do. For example, this afternoon, I'll be at the radiologist to get my back radiated for pain. And then I go from there to the oncologist where they'll do my blood work and I'll talk to the oncologist about how I'm doing with my cancer treatment. And yet, people say, well, how can you be so positive? And, my entire day from 1 o'clock until 5 o'clock will be at doctors in the hospital. And I say, well, what's your choice? And life is all about choice and what you decide you're going to choose and how you're going to live your life. And I think that's what you've discovered, and that's what you have helped a lot of women with. So, do you think it's ever okay to settle and just be where you are at, even if it's not your ideal vision? I kind of know what your answer is going to be, but I needed to ask you that question.
Well, you know what? My answer might surprise you. I think settling is, to me, I guess another word I would use would be negotiations or trade-offs. I think compromise is key in relationships, clearly, and so settling. It depends on what your view of settling is. If settling means giving up what you wanted again, and you do it begrudgingly, and as you said, with an attitude that isn't conducive to joy in life, then no, that's not a good time. But when you say, you know what, right now, I'm going to do this because it makes this other thing possible, then I think that, air quotes again, settling is perfectly acceptable. If I could give you just one quick example, I have a client who came to me because her intention was to leave her corporate job and to start her own business. And I do some business consulting as well. So, it was, and she's midlife. So it was a perfect kind of, I was a perfect person to be helping her. So we did like I said, I have different exercises I do with different people, different ways of conversing about it and whatnot. And at the end of the day, the determination that she made was that her corporate job made the other things in her life possible that were more important to her, time with her family and some other volunteer types of things that the company paid for her to be involved in. And that after exploration and starting her own business would have cost her some of that time and the luxury and flexibility. And she said, you know what? I don't think I want to do this. It's not my dream anymore. And that to me is not settling. That to
No,
me
bully
is,
for her that she discovered that, because she would have been quite unhappy had she chosen the other path.
yes, exactly.
Wow. Wow. Well, we have about 5 minutes left in this segment, Sheree, and I just want to make sure that we cover a lot of what we want to say. So, would you say that uh, you didn't feel at your best at some point in your life?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I owned a business for 25 years that I really enjoyed owning and doing for about 14. And the last 11 were not what I wanted to be doing. And it took a lot of courage to finally get up and go because you've heard the term golden handcuffs. My economic situation was such that it was hard to leave in a good way. It's like I thought, whoa, how can I have replicate this another way? And I was well known. I had all the trappings, all of the things that we all want, that or that many of us want. Success in every sense of the word, but I wasn't happy. And so that was probably a big courage moment for me. That and the decision that I was going to have to deal with my relationship with my mother, as I've alluded to, those two times were pretty pivotal for me. And they both inform how I work with others because I have a great deal of empathy for people who feel stuck and feel like they're talking about the same thing over and over and over, and they feel like they can't break the chain and they don't know how to move forward. And that's what I specialize in, is saying, okay, let's break this down, take a breath, let's see what's really possible.
It's interesting because I kind of went through the same thing. I've had four different businesses, and when I was working as a full-time speaker and consultant, I worked in the areas of leadership and team building and customer service. And I worked with corporations and associations, and I worked in 50 countries and 49 states, and I loved every minute of it. And then I came to the realization, it was almost like a spigot. I mean, it just got turned around in like a half a second. And I thought, they're paying me well and I'm making good money, but nobody is really paying attention. They're doing what they want to do anyway. I mean, I go in there, I have an impact. They love me, they pay me well, and then they do what they want anyway, which of course was their choice. But I thought, this is not cutting it for me anymore. And that's when I made the shift over to working with women 50 plus. Now, the remuneration has not been there the way it was before, but I love what I do. And I still am amazed at some of the choices that corporations make because I don't agree with it necessarily. But I know what you're talking about, and I know that it does have an effect on you. And at the same time, my husband got sick, and I decided I didn't want to really travel as much because I was doing a huge amount of traveling. And of course, he passed away. But it just life throws you a whole bunch of curves, and then it's how you meet them that makes the difference. And that's what you're offering these women that come to you. You're helping them round that curve and get on the road that they need to. And maybe that's why your company is called ForkRoad. I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but maybe that's kind of how it happened. I don't know. Well, we have just a minute left in this segment before we take a break. Anything you want to say in the last 60 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Spot on. I call my practice Fork in the Road because I believe that at any given point, we're all at a fork in the road. And it's not just the big forks like divorce or where you live or what your career is. It's the little forks. It's do I have a martini tonight, even though I know that it'll make it hard for me to get up in the morning. So let's work on our little forks as much as our big forks.
Wow, that is so true, so true. Well, my guest so far has been Sheree Clark, who is a midlife courage coach. Her company is called Fork-Road. That's her website, fork-road.com. And, she's going to be with us for our second half of the show. So stick with us, people, and we will be back shortly.